Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Jack the Lad podcast. On today's episode we've got on the Gorilla Man Eric Corrales. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So I came across you on Instagram, as I do near enough all of my guests, because you do parkour. And for me, and I don't mean any offence by it, you don't look like you should do parkour.
I get that quite often. Yes, most people think I am very large. Most people think I have a lot of fat on me. It's really a funny thing when someone meets me in person and they're like, "Oh, you're not as big as you look," because like I have pictures of me next to normal sized people, and I'm like a whole head shorter. I'm a very small person. I am very thick. I do have a belly, but the thing I have to constantly tell people is that like, just because you have abs doesn't mean you have a strong core. If you ever seen strong men, they have these massive stomachs, but their cores are just extremely strong. And so I think a lot of people think that just because you need to have a tons of ripped muscles, that's the only way you can do what I do. But that's not true. I mean, like, I think I can do what I can do because of the type of body that I have.
Right. Okay. I mean, I didn't mean any offense by it, obviously.
No. I get it. That's fine. I get it a lot.
Yeah, you are, you know, amongst the community. I mean, like I said before we came on the show, like I have a very, very limited knowledge of it, but just from the lads you see in the background, all the rest of it, you are, you know, you are shaped differently to.
I'm a different shape. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's an advantage or disadvantage. So how did you get into it to start with? Like, what was your, like, why not, you know, skateboarding or something else? Like, why was parkour the one that you chose?
So that's kind of funny, actually. I did come from a skating background.
Right.
So I actually saw parkour for the very first time. In 2003, there was a old website called stupidvideos.com. And it was like the original YouTube. I think I also saw this video on E-Bombs World back when that was still a thing. And it was of David Bell. And it was like the first parkour video that got really released and people really started watching. And then in 2003, I went outside and we learned some parkour, my brother and I, and we were actually just naturally good at it. Like, we were able to do a lot of things that we saw in the video. And then, of course, as like 2003 was 20 years ago. So, of course, as a 9-year-old, I was super interested in it for about a week.
Yep.
And then I was like, all right, cool. I know this stuff. I'm going to not do it anymore. But my dad is from Panama. And he grew up in the jungle. And so he was always climbing trees to get things. And so when I was younger, he showed me how to climb trees. And I really enjoyed climbing trees. Trees are basically parkour. I just didn't realize it at the time. And so I got really proficient at it. I mean, I was able to jump from branch to branch and things like that at a young age. And I kept doing it throughout life. And so that's probably why I was pretty athletic. But at the same time, even though I was young and able to do all these things, I was still a roly-poly. Legitimately, I was a round kid. My nickname when I was 3 was Hot Breath, Big Ol' Butt, Big Ol' Belly Bubba, because I had a big belly and a big old butt. And
that's a mouthful.
I guess that kind of stuck with me throughout the years. But anyways, so then I got into aggressive inline, so rollerblading, and I was pretty good at that until I was probably 12 or 13. That's when I really was still doing it, and that got me pretty good at air awareness and taking impact because I fell a lot, and that kind of shaped me up a little bit. I was still kind of rounder, kind of bigger, but I was able to start defining into muscle, and then 2008 is when I officially started parkour. I did it because one day I woke up and I was like, I'm gonna go land a backflip. And I literally spent, I don't know, probably about 3 months just going for a backflip. I've never done one before. I was always scared of them, so I just started hucking myself. And I mean, as a kid, you can do that, and it's okay because you know what, you might get hurt, but you're bendy.
Yeah.
And so after 3 months of just falling on my face constantly on grass, I mean, like I wasn't at a gymnastics gym or anything like that. I literally just went outside and decided to try to do this thing.
Yeah.
And one day on June 30th, 2008, I was at this little festival, and some kids were watching me do this backflip and not landing it. And they got so excited and they grabbed all their friends, like, this guy's doing backflips. And I was like, oh, shoot. So now I have like 30 kids surrounding me, is like, do a backflip, do a backflip. And I did one and I landed it. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I'd ever landed it.
Nice.
And after that day, I just started doing it. I did so many backflips that day. And I went home and told my mom and my family, I was like, hey, I can backflip. And I think it was kind of like a motivational thing, because my brothers, both my older brother Alex and my older brother JT, they could both do backflips. I remember my older brother JT doing backflips when I was younger. And so I guess that was more just a generational thing. I guess we all could do it at some point. Which is kind of cool, actually. I didn't even think about that until just now. And so the next day I started doing more backflips and I started to hone it. And I realized I have a gift for understanding how to analyze movement. And that's definitely evolved over the years with teaching and just doing parkour. I was able to figure out little things in the backflip to help improve it significantly. And so it got better throughout the years. And I'll kind of go through that throughout this timeline. And so the reason I got into parkour is the next day I was just on Google and I looked up parkour because I remember doing it as a kid very briefly. And I found there was a parkour class taught at a gymnastics gym, literally right in town. And the class had just started that February. The guy who started the class, he got the motivation from Casino Royale, from that beginning scene where they're running through the construction site. Yeah. And he was like, I want to do that. So he was a gymnast. And so he got a group together and he started doing it. And so that was kind of cool. And so I started taking that class, and the class was pretty small. It had probably 10 people in it. But it was nice because those 10 people were the people who stuck to it with me. And so I had a cool little community. And the guy who was teaching class, Josh, he was like my mentor throughout my first few years of doing parkour. He was the person that actually made me really start to focus more on community because I remembered what he did. So he was a 30-something-year-old guy, and he would do weekly outdoor parkour every Saturday, and anybody could come. And I would go every single weekend because I loved it. It was a super fun thing. My brother and I both did it too, and we just kept going. And it was nice to have a community and friends, because as a kid I was an awkward kid. I definitely stuck to parkour because I found a community of weird people that I could just be weird with. And that's something that most people don't realize, is that we might all be athletic, like almost superhero type people with what we can do. But at the same time, someone has some kind of niche that they do. So whether that's like they're anime nerds or they're gaming nerds or whatever, they all have some weird thing that you wouldn't realize unless you talk to them personally.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of that in the jiu-jitsu community as well. I started jiu-jitsu a few months back, and it is like everyone's... I'm not going to say everyone's weird, because obviously the boys are going to listen to this and I'm just going to end up getting choked out a lot, but everyone's got their, that little something about them that is like they're off. I speak to everyone. I'm a really friendly guy at the academy and that. And I chat to everyone, and I always ask them like how they got into it, and all the rest of it, and just try and get little nuggets of knowledge and just bits about them, so especially to remember them as well. Do you know what I mean? If I've got like a bit about past, I remember names easier and stuff like that. I always do like a word association thing, and because
Correct.
there's like 30 odd of us, and we're not the new people anymore, but yeah. So when you're saying when you first started in the parkour, what sort of moves are you learning at the sort of basic level? Like when you're turning up day one, like if it, me for example, what would you get me to do?
Well, so actually, I'll get to the point of my story where I actually opened up a gym, and so if you watch any of my videos, I'm in a gym quite often, and that's actually my business. I own that place, and so I've been teaching it for a while. So as a teacher of parkour and someone who's been doing it for so long, my main thing is to make sure that you understand how to fall correctly, that you know how to balance correctly, and how you get over obstacles as efficiently as possible. So my first thing would be a safety vault, which is a really basic vault. It's just one hand on something, the opposite foot on something, and you just thread the foot that's on the ground through and down to the other side of the ground. It is the safest way to get over an obstacle, and probably one of the most efficient ways as well. The next one would be what everyone assumes is the name. It's a parkour roll. It's not actually, I call it a safety roll because it's supposed to be safe. And a lot of people confuse that with somersaults. So somersault is going from your head straight down your spine, like in gymnastics. With parkour, you want to try to take away as much impact as you can with your hands and then pick a shoulder. So I pick my left shoulder. So I then drop into my left elbow to my left shoulder and then turn my head to the right side. And what that does is it basically would take all that impact and put it into muscle or fatty tissue and then go across the spine down to the opposite hip, because you want to have as little bit of impact on your spine as possible, especially on a harder surface. Because if you take hard impact into your spine, it can really mess you up. And so I always try to teach to go across your back to the opposite hip. It doesn't always feel good. And that's when I tell kids are like, it hurts. I'm like, well, okay, would you rather it hurt learning how to get to the point where it doesn't hurt? Or would you rather not know how to do it, fall, and injure yourself even further? And you said you do jiu-jitsu. So I'm assuming that you know how to roll, especially coming from a military background. You also probably had to learn that in the military. So side roll or shoulder roll.
Combat roll, it's called. Combat roll in the military, and then it's just called a roll in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, because you're going to get thrown over in jiu-jitsu for someone to get you into a lock or something like that. So usually you have to know how to break fall, and that's where that technique comes from. Is usually from a martial arts background.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people who come in who are judo or any kind of martial arts really, and that's what they do, and they usually roll up to their knee. And so with you, if you were to come in, I would see that, okay, you rolled up to your knee, which I actually don't. Yeah. I don't teach that. I would have to unteach that for this specific instance, because I've had occasions where I've rolled up to my knee and hit a pebble or a sprinkler or something like that. And you don't realize that when you're in an open space where there's nothing that's hazardous for you to land on. It doesn't matter if you have forward momentum. If you come up to your knee and you hit something, your momentum's going to carry you to the ground and you will just crash and burn. So rolls are not the other really important thing that I would teach. Then I have safety taps, which is the alternative to a roll. Instead of having forward momentum and you're taking a straight drop, you would do a safety tap to take away the impact and make sure that you're not injuring yourself from a height. The next one I would probably teach would be how to balance correctly. There is a specific ways to balance. If you're on a bar or something like that, if your feet are like this, most people assume they should walk on a bar like this, and then feet turn to the side because they feel like it's easier to walk. But that's not actually balancing as much as you think. If you go onto a bar and your feet are straight, you're going to have heel toe on the bar, and you're going to be able to balance way easier. It's also about getting the center. So having your chin, your chest all the way straight down to the foot that's on the bar. If you ever watch tight ropers, they have those big bars that counteract the weight, and that's basically going to be your arms. And so having those few things to start and understand how to get started those basics will help immensely. And balancing is absolutely one of the major things that everybody should know how to do as they get older. Because as you get older, your brain starts to change and balance becomes way harder to do. If an older person will just learn how to retain their balance and keep a focal point, I guarantee they're going to have less falls as they get older. And then with that being said, knowing how to roll, or now how not to fall forward and put your hands like this, which usually causes wrist breaks, can also help significantly. I've taught workshops where I taught trail runners or the older community how to fall correctly and not injure themselves. And then the last thing I'd probably teach is how to climb up correctly. Most people, when they climb up on top of a structure, they usually use their knees to climb up. That's a big no-no in parkour. We don't use our knees to climb up on top of things. I didn't used to have a reasoning behind it. It was just kind of, I did it because everybody else did it. But now after years and years of teaching it with kids, like saying why, and then they go and do it immediately, they find out why. Usually they're running, and what will happen is if you use your knee to press up on top of something, and then you try to get your knee on top of the structure, what's the first thing that you're going to hit the corner of?
The edge of the structure.
Yeah, and what part of your body?
If you're climbing up it with your knee, surely.
Yeah, exactly, your knee. And then you're going to hit your shin, and then you're going to clip your toe, and then you're going to face plant. Okay, if zombies are chasing you, they're going to eat you because you didn't use your feet. Okay,
I like the reference.
Yeah, so basically, don't become zombie food. You got to climb up to your feet so you can continue to run forward and not worry about tripping. But opposed to the zombie thing, you want to make sure that, like, as we get older, our joints start to hurt more. I mean, years and years of doing this, my joints hurt. I can't say I'm perfect. I'm not a superhuman. But if I continue to sit on my knees, that's why people who do roofing, they start to have knee issues and back issues. It's because they're going onto their knees so much. And so having your feet just continue to get up on top of something, you're going to have way less knee issues as you get older as well. So those are probably all the basic things that I would teach you. Sorry, I went way more in depth on those than you probably needed.
No, not at all. No, like I said before the podcast, like as in depth as you want to go into things is fine with me. Like I said, I know nothing about parkour, so anything that you're telling me, I'm learning. And I'm
perfect.
I'm sure the listeners will enjoy it as well. So obviously you're talking about the practical application of it. What is something that, sort of anyone could do, if you were to, obviously you spoke through obviously the falling and all the rest of it, but what is something someone could do at home, that just to aid with their balance or stuff like that? Is standing on one foot good? Or like how could you how could a listener who's listening now do something to aid with their balance?
Well, I can absolutely transition this my computer somewhere else to actually demonstrate it if you would like.
Okay. While you're demonstrating it, if you want to say it as well, because obviously I have listeners.
I will.
As well.
I have my headphones in, so yeah. I can absolutely do that.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, all right, cool.
This is Jack the Lad podcast first.
Oh, great. Well, I'm a movement-based person, so I have to actually show the movement. I do have a slight injury at the current moment. I have a leg injury that I did last year that I hit my shin really hard into a bar. And essentially what happened is they told me not to hit my leg again, and I hit it in Colorado 2 weeks ago. So currently have an injury because of that. But I'm taking it slow and just recovering. So one of the main things that I always suggest people do is understand how to continue to keep mobility. When you take any kind of landing, if you land with your legs straight like this, you might have seen video. I mean, you might have seen the video of the guy jumping off the roof, and he lands like this, and he bends forward, and his knees collapse. Basically, it's pretty gnarly. You never want to do that because that can cause lifelong issues. So just getting into the idea of landing on your toes and then squatting down and taking away the impact of a landing can help significantly. If you're landing any kind of straight legs, not only are you causing tension all the way up all these joints, but you're also getting into your hips and your back, which as you get older, it's not a good thing to have back or hips issues. And it's gonna happen anyways, but you don't want it to be amplified because of incorrect landing. So just being able to land on your toes, the balls of your feet being, well, don't land on your balls, but land on the balls of your feet. Right here in this area. If you land on your heel, that hurts. You land on your arch, that also hurts. The balls of the feet is where you're going to get the most compression and the most bounce. And then you're going to compress all the way down, knees over toes, butt over heels, and chest as straight down as possible. I explained what a safety tap was. That's basically the same exact motion, except you're going to squat down, put your hands down to the ground, and that takes away the impact and makes it so that the drop is going to feel way less. It's also going to be way better on your joints. And then usually from this, you would go into a roll. So if you learn safety tap, you can learn the roll at the same process. But yeah, realistically, if you're just at home, just getting to the point where you have this mobility where you can go flat-footed and then squat down as far as you can. Usually if your knees are in, you can't go much further because your chest is going to get hit, especially if you're not used to it. Some people can do it naturally, but not everybody can. So just having knees go out can get you into that really deep squat. This is a great mobility thing to help with understanding how to land correctly, and just doing it in general just really helps in general. So this deep squat is where you want to land. One thing that you can also do is go on your toes and then drop your knees forward, go to your knees, and then from your knees, you're going to pop back up into this position. Because when you're landing on top of something, sometimes you have too much momentum carrying you forward or back, and you would use this technique to get your balance back. If you have nothing like this at home, which I guarantee majority of the people will not have this at home, I use this for balancing on. I use this for working on this technique. But not everyone's going to have that. So if you don't have that, just imagine that you're on something. You put one foot on that thing, you put the other foot out, and you just work on this balance. The hardest thing that most people have with doing that type of balancing is that they are so focused on everything else going around them that they lose their balance on that one foot or whatever they're on. The other issue that most people have is when they start to walk, they try to go as quickly as possible. Patience is key. That's why there's the term, the tortoise will beat the hare, is because the hare will go fast, it'll get distracted. You want to be the tortoise when you're balancing on top of something, because you don't want to slip and fall and then be out completely. So just continue to go slowly, making sure you have a balance on each step will help significantly with your balancing and understanding how to do that. And then, like I said, just this deep squat here, sitting here like this, it fits perfectly because like I always feel like I'm a legit gorilla when I'm just sitting like this. And this is how I usually sit if I'm waiting in line or something like that for a long time. I'll just go down like this. People will look at me like I'm weird, but like it's whatever. I'm a parkour person. So yeah, these are the few things I would recommend doing at home. If you have taken martial arts at any point, you can always just try to squat down, go into the deep squat, pick a shoulder. I go to my left shoulder, and you can try to just do that simple roll and then come up to your feet. And then if you have carpet, this is like the best possible surface that you can use to understand how to roll correctly. Because when you start taking it at harder surfaces, you feel it significantly more. I'm a thicker person, but at the same time, I still feel it on occasion. that doesn't ever go away. It just lessens. It's like building any kind of muscle. The more muscle you build, the less likely you're going to be sore, but you're still going to feel it if you have if you only do legs every day. You're going to do a workout one day and your legs are going to feel it more. And so it's the same exact thing. You build up muscles everywhere else or for the roll, and you're still going to feel it. So if you feel the roll, it's okay. Just keep pushing through it.
Yeah, I would relate it in jiu-jitsu terminology as being strangled all the time. Because the more you get strangled, the better your neck gets. Like, you get more tolerant to being strangled. Which I've found that just in the sort of short space that I've been going on my return to martial arts, is, you know, how much longer I can. Well, not a lot longer, but it's a chunk of time that I'm like, well, I'd feel this before, but now, you know, I've got another 5 seconds, so I've got an extra, you know, bit of time to try and get out of it. But there's some lads there that they can hold on for a while. But like you say, it never gets any better.
My brother's MMA. He's jiu-jitsu. Okay. He's grappling. He's all that kind of stuff. And I've literally seen people choke him, and he's just turning purple, but somehow still breathing through it.
Yeah, it's just all the neck muscles. Like, there's some old school thing, like people used to chew rubber, like they'd bite down on rubber really hard, and like it just tenses your neck. I mean, you've got like the iron neck and stuff like that. Joe Rogan bangs on about that quite a bit, but I haven't ever seen one in a gym, to be honest. And I'm not going to take my own equipment into a gym to work out. So yeah, I mean, he raves about it. He says it's a really good bit of kit. So I might get onto my gym about getting one. But yeah, so. You mentioned then when you were squatting down about your gorilla, and your nickname is, you know, the Gorilla Man. Where did that nickname come from?
When in like 2000 and I want to say 2011, people started calling me Floaty, and that was my original nickname. Was because whenever I jump, I kind of just float. It's just I don't know why. A lot of people are usually like, what do I do to get stronger? Like why am I able to jump like I do or have the power that I do? And they usually ask like what's your workout look like? Man, I actually kind of get sick of answering this because I feel bad. I don't work out. I don't go to a gym to work out. I jump a lot, and sometimes if I see a really big rock, I'll just go lift that rock.
Right.
And so I don't do weights or anything like that. And usually what I'll just tell people is it's just good genes. My family's genes we're all just short, stocky, powerful people. Like my older brother, he's turning 39 and he can still grab rim, and he's my height. He's 5'5".
Grab rim
on a basketball hoop, 10 feet.
Oh, right. Okay.
So he can jump and grab the rim on a 10-foot basketball hoop. Sorry, there's terminologies.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, we do have basketball here, but it's nowhere near the sort of same, you know, level.
But yeah, it's football. Essentially, that's like, it's just good genes. And so Floaty was my nickname prior.
Right.
And then into like 2000 and I want to say 16, I went to a parkour gathering in Colorado, and that was at a time where I was probably the most lean I had ever been, but I was still this same like stocky build, and I was just a short, powerful person. And essentially, I ended up just walking down this staircase at this place I was staying at, and it's early morning, and I am walking down, and the people who are there is like, oh, here comes the Gorilla Man. And I was like, I like that. And for some reason it stuck that entire event. And then I went back the next year, and somebody was like, oh, you're that Gorilla guy. And it wasn't until 2017 that I actually started my Instagram. I was opposed to having an Instagram for the longest time.
Right.
And I did it because I wanted to continue to watch my progress and go back and see where I was to where I am now. Yeah. And so I changed it to Gorilla Man Parkour. and that stuck. And now wherever I go, usually people are like, "Hey, you're Gorilla Man," and they'll be like, "I don't actually know your name, but I know you're Gorilla Man." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm Eric, or you can call me Gorilla Man, whatever you want to do."
Yeah, yeah. I think you should just stick to Gorilla Man. Keep the mystique.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, okay, so we've got 8.5 minutes left on this one. I'm not sure if you
That went way
see.
fast.
Yeah, I said beforehand, didn't I? I said 40 minutes. It does just shoot by, especially if once you're getting into the weeds of, obviously you spoke about you showed us the balancing bits. So what was, when did you sort of commit to it and then, start your gym?
I've been committed to it since I started. So I was homeschooled in 2008. I can honestly say that I was not homeschooled at all. I didn't do the work mostly because I hated school. Um, and that's not my mom's fault or anything like that. That's just me being someone who didn't like school. I said I did it and I never did. I went outside and I did parkour, and I knew that's something that I wanted to do. And I really stuck to it because my brother did it with me and I was better than him at it. I had never been better than my brothers at anything. So I stuck to it because of that reason. And then after that, it continued to get pushed, and I realized, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this thing. And so I stuck to it even longer. And then I started getting into community side of things and meeting people from other states and cities. And I started to really fall in love with the community of what parkour is. And so I started going to jams in other places for many years, and it started seeing that, like, even though I was really, a lot of my stuff was self-taught, I was still at a high level of athleticism and a high level of like parkour. And I had never thought I would be at that point. And so I stuck to it because I knew I could continue to go up in levels. And I definitely decided that I wanted to just open up my own gym in 2012. I was teaching at that gymnastics gym that I started at. I ended up taking over the entire program and being the director for that program. I also started teaching at schools and teaching after school and parkour electives during that time, which I was also a teenager. I don't know why they let me do that. And so essentially I was like, okay, this is going to be my career. And I decided 2013 that I was going to push to try to get my gym started. It took about 2 years and I finally got it started. And that's where the career side of parkour came into play, where I started actually making it into my work, my business, and everything like that. And then 2017, I started Instagram. I'd had no intention on becoming an influencer or having a big following or anything like that. I just post stuff because I think it's cool. And then in 2022, February, I posted a video while I was in LA. And this line wasn't really that crazy of a line, in my opinion. Everyone thought that like it took forever to do. I literally just like, I practiced one move, and then I told my buddy Cameron, I was like, hey, can you film this? And he was like, yeah, sure. And for some reason, everybody else who was there popped out their phones. That must be LA culture, because then I had like 6 people filming me at the same time from all different angles, yep. Which was weird for me. And so I did this line. It's just, I did a vault to a flip to a roll to another flip. And it was just a normal thing to me. And then nothing really happened with that. But then a month later, it went viral. And that video hit like 12.5 million views. And that made my Instagram account just blow up. I got shared by ESPN. I got shared by SportsCenter. And throughout that, the whole last year and a half or so, my social media has just been growing. And so at the current moment, I'm at this weird point where, do I want to take it seriously and actually do the social media career side of it? Because I'm kind of getting burnt out with my gym. I kind of want to just put that in my past and go on to something new. And my wife and I both like to travel, so it's like, why not travel and try to do some social media things? And so that's the new career kind of choice I'm trying to go with. I also plan on just being a mailman. I want to be a mailman really bad, which is a weird thing. So a parkour mailman, you know.
Yeah, why not? You could climb the fences and whatnot. You get around the dogs.
Yeah, if the dog's coming at me, I just won't use my knees.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. It's been very educational, and I'm sure the listeners will take a lot away from it, especially with the balancing and whatnot. Are you going to stick around for a second episode?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to myself on the screen. That was just me. It wasn't recording anymore, but I was just saying exactly. Yeah, I actually had a good time, and I appreciate you having me on. That was the first time I've ever done that, and I know, honestly, with how much I talk, you might have to do 3.
Yeah, it's fine. That's fine. So do you want to give everyone your social media? I'll be able to splice all this in. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine, everyone. Yeah. Do you want to give everyone your socials?
Yeah. Instagram and Facebook are both Gorilla Man, GORI. Wait, I'm not even gonna spell it. I'm gonna mess up. Gorilla Man _ so the dot under the line underneath parkour.aim. The AIM is actually my business, Abstract in Motion. So it's just the acronym of that. So if you see that, that's why it is.
Nice. Well, like I said, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. It was very, very educational, and we shall see you next week, everybody.
Perfect. Bye, everyone.